Good morning. I'll have to end a few minutes early today. I hope you'll bear with me about that. So today we're looking at Kripke's naming a necessity again. On Monday we'll again be looking at naming a necessity. And going back over the question, is it true as Frege and Searle thought that descriptions fix the references of ordinary proper names? Kripke's got a quite different take on this question, a quite different picture of how the connect between the sign and the object gets set up. It's probably the view of reference that's the most common today. It's taken for granted, I think, by most people working on language today. So I'll set that out in the second section, and then, assuming time permits, we'll move on to look at questions about informative identities. Once more, because no class would be complete without us looking at informative identities, right? Okay, so last time we were looking at what fixes in the reference of the name Gödel relative to different possible worlds. And what I was saying was, if you take the name of someone famous like Gödel, there are two questions. One is, how is his reference fixed in the actual world? How does the name get hooked up to an object in the actual world? And then the other question is, when you talk about what could have happened to Gödel, what would have happened to Gödel under various counterfactual circumstances, is it still a description that's fixing the reference? And last time I was arguing, no, it's always the same object that the name is referring to in different possible worlds, even though the descriptions that the thing is satisfying might be quite different. How about that? That's all right so far? Any questions on that? Okay, plain as day? Okay. So you get the cluster of descriptions associated with Gödel, the Searle-style generation of the dossier, and then you get the idea that so that's perfectly, well, reasonably well defined. It's as well defined as anything in this area tends to be. So then the question is that what's fixing the reference? Now, Searle admits that there can be, indeed he says it's an advantage of his account, that it acknowledges types of indeterminacy about which descriptions are in the cluster. If only one or two people put descriptions into the cluster, does that get in? If some descriptions get in that conflict with other descriptions, do those get in? What kind of weight do you give to particular descriptions in the cluster? And how many descriptions in the cluster does an object have to match to be the reference of the term? So there's kind of indeterminacy about all these things. So that gives the view a lot of flexibility. It's difficult to get a knockdown objection to the view when it has that kind of flexibility in it. But Kripke's argument is nothing like that is right. That whole picture is wrong from start to finish, and it can't be fixed by juggling with the pieces here. As I say, there's room for flexibility, but Kripke is going to argue none of this is right. Ordinary proper names don't have their references fixed by descriptions at all. And one key example he gives, you really have to read the whole thing, partly because it consolidates everything we've done so far. Like kind of a sound effect. Here comes the causal theory of reference. Okay, here it comes. And here's one key example Kripke gave, very influential example. Gödel, Kurt Gödel, very famous as discovering the incompleteness of arithmetic. Proving that for any finitely statable set of axioms for arithmetic, there are going to be truths of arithmetic that can be recognized to be true, but not provable in that system. Okay, so we all know who Gödel is. He's the person who discovered the incompleteness of arithmetic. So can we say that that's what fixes the reference of the term? Well, and Kripke outlines this picture in which Gödel, who was, of course, an unassuming and immensely distinguished Princeton mathematician, Gödel in Kripke's picture may actually have been a somewhat desperate character. Here he is. And you can see what Kripke means. These are his accomplices in, I guess, early mid-century Austria. And suppose that someone else, not Gödel, was the brilliant and hard-working mathematician who carried out the proof of the incompleteness of arithmetic. Gödel never did any of that stuff. Gödel was simply the brains of the outfit that stole this other guy's discovery. You can imagine that scenario. As Kripke says in the lecture, I hope Professor Gödel is not present. So Schmidt, let us call him, the guy who did prove the incompleteness of arithmetic. Here's Kripke's scenario. Suppose Gödel was not, in fact, the author of this theorem. A man named Schmidt, whose body was found in Vienna under mysterious circumstances many years ago, actually did the work in question. His friend, Gödel, somehow got hold of the manuscript, and it was thereafter attributed to Gödel. So this is the scenario. Poor old Schmidt, lying there somewhere on a rain-swept street. It's still true that even if Gödel did not discover the incompleteness of arithmetic, the name still refers to the person who stole the credit. So for any set of descriptions, you could get this phenomenon. You can get this with Aristotle. Maybe back in Athens, Aristotle actually stole the credit for all those works. It makes perfect sense to say perhaps Aristotle was a fraud. Perhaps Gödel was an impostor. He passed himself off as having done this proof. That makes perfect sense. The story is not a contradiction. When I describe the scenario to you, I am not describing a scenario in which it turns out that Gödel was not this man, Gödel was actually Schmidt. If you see what I mean. Was that a bit too fast? If you assume that the name Gödel has its reference fixed by the discoverer of the incompleteness of arithmetic, then in this scenario, what you're discovering is that Schmidt was Gödel. But that's not right. What you're discovering is that Gödel was a fraud. Was that too fast? Okay, so if I've explained that correct, that should be completely obvious. But if that's right, then it really is over for the description theory of the way names get their references fixed. You can always find out that the set of descriptions you associate with a name, they do not actually apply to that person. Those descriptions got associated with that person as a result of some error. Kripke goes on to point out that it's also true, and it's almost trivial really, that a point we've made many times before in this class, that if you take the descriptions most people associate with a name, they may be wildly off the mark. Maybe most people do think that Einstein, insofar as they've heard of him at all, was the inventor of the atomic bomb. That does not show that Einstein was not the guy who showed that E equals mc squared. That just shows that the reference is not being fixed by those descriptions that are popularly associated with the name. Or one other example, People say, there are people who say, well, after all those plays commonly attributed to Shakespeare, they were not written by Shakespeare. Shakespeare stole the credit for them from Bacon. But when people say this, they are saying Shakespeare was a fraud. They are not saying Shakespeare was Bacon. As you can see, these are two quite different people. One of them wears a hat. You see what I mean? Here we have two people. One is Shakespeare, one is Bacon. If Shakespeare stole the credit for Bacon's plays, so that the descriptions we commonly associate with the name Bacon, so that the descriptions we commonly associate with the name Shakespeare are all in fact true of Bacon, that does not show that Shakespeare and Bacon are one and the same person. They are two different people. It's just that we associated all the wrong descriptions with the name Shakespeare. Therefore, the reference to the name Shakespeare is not being fixed by the set of descriptions we associate with the term. The reference to the name Einstein is not being associated with the totality of descriptions we associate with the term. The reference to the name Gödel is not being fixed by the totality of descriptions we associate with the term. Here ends the first lesson. Yes? Yep. That's right. I think that is Searle's idea. You could always cast off some of the descriptions, but the whole boat could still keep afloat. Something like that. Yeah. But the thing about this Gödel example is that Gödel's quite well known in academic life. Yeah. I mean, quite well known anyway. But that's the stuff that everybody knows about him. I mean, there isn't anything left. You see what I mean? There isn't anything left to fix the reference once you've thrown out those descriptions. These are the central things we know about Gödel. On any kind of picture where you have some kind of weighted vote being given to a whole bunch of descriptions, anyone would say these mathematical discoveries, they're the most important things. Or if you take Shakespeare, very little is known about Shakespeare's private life. The vast majority of what's known about Shakespeare has to do with him writing those plays. Yeah? So the thing about these examples is there's nothing left when you subtract those descriptions. It's fair enough for yourself to say, I can juggle with it a bit at the fringes, but this is the centre. Yep. Yep. The fraud, yes. You could find a new description, that's right. But the thing is, that is coming after the fact. What's happening is that you've got the name, you've got the object, you've got the connect between the name and the person. You are discovering that all the descriptions you associated with that name are not true of the person. And now you say, well, what is true of this guy? Well, he was a fraud and so on. And so you now revise what descriptions you associate with the name. That is what would happen. But the point is that that's assuming that there's a connect between the name and the person that has been set up independently of the descriptions. And that connect is what you're using to drive which descriptions you associate with the name. Yeah. Yep.
So if I'm talking about Shakespeare, or my way of understanding Shakespeare is this description that actually applies to Bacon, when I
Yes.
Shakespeare, am I talking about Shakespeare or am I talking about Bacon?
Right. Well, on a description theory, you'd be talking about Bacon. But the claim is, that's the wrong answer. You're still talking about Shakespeare. And Shakespeare is Shakespeare. Oh, you see what I mean? Yeah. That's the argument anyhow. Yep.
So it seems like, I'm not sure that Bacon were to say Shakespeare's fraud and Bacon fraud every description, you could say that, you could still say that makes sense. So like saying that not only was Shakespeare a fraud, he didn't even exactly and everything, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, no, then that Shakespeare I was talking about doesn't exist.
That's very important, I think. Yeah. I mean, if you say Shakespeare, I would like to give some examples of that kind, but if you said, look, Shakespeare was born just 2 months ago. Yeah. He's only 2 months old. He didn't write any of those plays. Yeah. And then, is it really the same person? Yeah. That is a point for the description theory, I agree. And I agree too that Kripke's formulations leave it wide open that that possibility could be correct, that you could still be referring to Shakespeare, even though you were so wildly wrong about the descriptions. And that doesn't seem right. Yeah. The positive thing that Kripke does get, though, is if you say, I mean, how should I put this? If you say, well, I've got to get, there are boundaries, right? That's a way of putting the point, there are boundaries. So he can't have lived all that long after the time you think he lived that. He can't have lived all that long before. If you said, well, Shakespeare was born in the Stone Age, they couldn't even write then. I mean, he couldn't have written those plays. Yeah, that's the same thing. So you say, well, something about boundaries, and he can't actually have been a frog. I mean, the animal. Yeah. Then you say, well, there's boundaries around which descriptions could be true, and Kripke doesn't really have any place for those boundaries around the descriptions that can be true. But it seems right that there are boundaries. But just saying it's got to be something within those boundaries isn't going to be enough to fix a reference. Yeah, that's the key thing that Kripke still has. Yeah, so I think the point's extremely important, but it doesn't bring back the description theory. Yeah, it says there was something right about the description theory. Yeah. Okay, 1, 2. But we should move on because I was trying not to talk for so long. But we should move on after this because I will have to stop a little bit. Carry on.
Okay, so these examples seem to like very they kind of famous people are lyrics who like know based on these works, and like
Yeah.
people are familiar with that. Like I can't remember people who like know what
Yes.
are they're just,
Yes.
So like it seems like treating proper names in a very difficult manner. Like, the way I refer to like my best friend, like I say that I'm just separate, and then the way I say I'm really so there's evidence that like
Yes.
I know that present,
Yes. Well, I mean, even with family members, I mean, this is more like a kind of spooky movie, but even with family members, can't you imagine this kind of thing? I mean, your best friend says, do you remember that walk we took when we were children by the cliffs at the seaside so long ago? And you say, yes, that's one of my most precious memories of you. That's right at the heart of the cluster of descriptions I associate with your name. And he says, that was my evil twin. You never knew about my evil twin. You see what I mean? Or that woman says, I'm not your mother. You see what I mean? I don't want to make the spine tingle too much, but these things could happen. Yeah, you could make those discoveries. Yeah, you'd still be talking about that same person, despite all these revelations. Yeah, that's the idea anyway. Yeah. Last one? It's not quick. Okay, let's talk about it later. Yeah. Okay. So Kripke's positive picture. Well, one way to think about what Kripke's positive picture is to think about photographs. So I have here a simple goose. That is a goose, isn't it? Yeah, it's a bird. Let's just call it a bird. Right? I have here a picture of a simple bird. Now there are tons of birds quite like that. Yeah? So let us ask the question, for photographs, you can ask the question that's parallel to the question about reference. Which thing is this a photograph of? So there's a question of ofness for photographs, as is the question of reference for signs. Yeah? So you can think, well, one theory you could have that would be like the description theory for photographs would be that a photograph is a photograph of the thing that is most like it. So in order to find which bird this is a photograph of, what you'd have to do is go among the geese and discover the one that looks most like that. So that's what you might call a match theory of who the photograph is of. But of course, that is not actually how we think of photographs. And it could turn out that around this goose, this is taken at Civic Centre in San Rafael, where there are literally just thousands of geese, all very similar. And let us suppose that among all those geese, there is one that is just a bit lighter than this one. But because of some mistake, some error in the photo processing, this coloration here is a bit lighter than the coloration of the bird that was actually in front of the camera when the picture was taken. Was that too fast? No, it was too slow? Okay. So let us suppose there is a goose there, roundabout, that matches the photo better than the one that was in front of the camera when the picture was taken. That does not show that this is really a picture of that other goose that I never ever pointed the camera at. You see what I mean? If you ask, what makes a photograph of one thing rather than another, what matters for it being a photograph of one thing rather than another is that is the thing, light bouncing off which entered the camera lens and affected the camera's sensor, resulting in the production of this photograph. So it's a thing that was causally involved in the production of the photograph. Some goose that matches this photograph very well, but was off on the other side of the planet, that's not the goose that this photograph is of. Photographs are of the things that were causally involved in the generation, in the production of the photograph. Yeah? That's how it can happen that you get a photograph of yourself, and you say, I don't look like that at all. Right? I look much better than that, you think. And that's not a photograph of me. I mean, if the match theory were right, you could actually argue, no, that's a photograph of someone else, because it doesn't match me at all. You see what I mean? But if you were actually sitting in front of the camera when the shutter went, then you are the person that photograph is a photograph of, and it doesn't matter whether you really look like that or not. So I think that is similar to Kripke's picture of how it works for names. That Kripke's picture is what goes on in the fixing of the reference of a name is you have some kind of initial dubbing. I'll call this child Saul. And then you have a chain of communication in which gossip, news, information about that person circulate in a community. You've got a chain of communication in which the name is passed from speaker to speaker. So what happens with you is that there's some kind of initial dubbing of you. And then as time goes on, you radiate information about yourself into the community. Your name gets passed from person to person. And there is a cluster of descriptions connected to you, but what matters is not who best matches the cluster of descriptions. What matters is how that cluster of descriptions was generated in the first place. So you might think people get it all wrong about me. I'm not the way they think I am. No one knows the real me. But still, you are the referent because you are the person that was causally implicated in the generation of all those descriptions. So what matters is how the cluster of descriptions is generated, not what best matches the cluster of descriptions. That's like the case with photographs. It's not what best matches the photograph, it's how it was generated, how the photograph was made. So you get two stages here. You get the initial baptism in which you maybe point to the thing, or you say by description, I'll call my oldest son Saul. You get that initial description in which you say, lo, Saul, or whatever. And then you get the second stage, that chain of communication. And there is a question, what's meant by chain of communication here? I mean, after all, if you say what he's got in mind here is something like this. He's talking about the physicist Feynman. Suppose the name is spread from link to link as if by a chain, and a certain passage of communication, reaching ultimately to the man himself, does reach the speaker. The speaker is then referring to Feynman. There's been that chain of talk from the initial dubbing through to you or I right now, and then we're referring to whoever it is that was at the other end of that chain, even though you or I can't identify them uniquely. A chain of communication going back to Feynman himself has been established by virtue of his membership in a community which passed the name on from link to link. It's not that sitting alone in your study you said, I suppose out there somewhere or other there is a great physicist. I shall call this guy Feynman. That's not what happened. Right? That can happen, but it's a very unusual case. Usually what happens is there's just that actual chain of talk that you pick up on. There's stuff going out there in the community that you pick up on in using the name, and you are referring to whoever's at the end of the chain that you picked up on. Think of the cluster, so you can think of the cluster of descriptions circulating in the community around Feynman as a kind of communal photograph of Feynman. So if you take Searle's dossier of descriptions, Searle's cluster of descriptions, think of that as a kind of communally generated photograph. It might be a good or an imperfect photograph of Feynman, but that cluster of descriptions is like the content of the photograph. And what you're talking about when you say Feynman is not whoever best matches the photograph. What you're talking about is whoever was causally involved in generating that cluster of descriptions. So that's why the cluster of descriptions, the idea that description 6 reference, turned out to be completely wrong. Not just wrong in some points of detail, but completely wrong.